With that, I will open the floor to anyone in the audience who has any questions, comments, concerns that they would like to share with us with respect to any matters that were not on our agenda this evening. And seeing none, are there any trustee comments? Mr. Holder.
I wanted to thank Ryan and Bob after the flash flood that we had and systems that were built by man and not obviously able to withstand nature. I want to applaud how you guys have responded to this. A lot of you folks don't know, but I mean, Ryan has worked around the clock and made over 200 house calls to folks affected, 600 emails, and continues to do that. I mean, not just going out and saying, "Gee, I'm really sorry, we can't," etc. Gathering data, understanding, trying to help and to care, because that's what we are. We're a community, we're neighbors, we all pull together in the times that are tough. And you guys really exemplify the very best. I just want to congratulate you and say thank you and keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with those comments, and I know the Public Works Department and its staff in general have been working really hard. And we approved the preliminary study tonight for the South of 47th Basin, which I think is a great idea. And I was just wondering if, I know the report is probably not going to get back till late October or November, but I was wondering if maybe we should think about scheduling that educational meeting that can help residents understand how the sewers work. And I think Lindsay pointed out, everybody wants some action to be taken. And I think we all know that the sewer changes aren't going to happen overnight, aren't going to happen in the next 6 months. So maybe an educational meeting sooner than later that can educate folks on how the surface water moves, and if they have a surface water issue versus a sewer backup issue, maybe what some of the general remedies are you can do as individual homeowners to protect your property in short term versus waiting kind of for this long-term plan to roll out. Because I think the discussions you've had, Ryan, the feedback I've had is that people found this to be wildly educational and really valuable in helping them shape their decisions to take action now. And I think that would be helpful for a lot of folks that are here and maybe folks that are home to help them take action now. If we could get that kind of educational thing out. So I don't know if we've talked about it, but maybe you could, in the next meeting, staff meeting, kind of back that idea around if everybody else agrees to that. But maybe something we could do in the next couple of weeks or next meeting or the following meeting, more educational sooner than later.
I appreciate it. I think our staff has kicked it around. Bob shared with me that they have talked about the pros and cons of doing something very quickly that would really be informational on just how the sewer system works. But I think the thought process from our staff is the more information that's been gathered, the more real information that can be delivered as well about, particularly with some of the televising of the sewers, if there may have been breaks or there may have been breaches or stoppages. There are some particular unique circumstances that they've already found in a couple of areas, so that beyond just explaining in general how the sewer system works, they'll be able to speak to a couple of specifics, more than probably a couple, but in unique areas of the village, so that people in those areas will really better understand exactly what happened. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, we're not waiting for the results of this engineering service, this agreement that we approved tonight, and a completely digested report from that, but you're really waiting more for all of the data that you're gathering now with respect to the storm events and the televising and some of the other related information gathering that you're doing right now.
That's correct.
So I think we're looking at as you said, 30 to 60 days as quickly as possible, but with the ability to deliver as much useful information as possible.
Yeah, my point there was I talked to a neighbor and they had sewer backup, and I said, you can put in an overhead sewer and stop that tomorrow. And they just were completely unaware of that. Now, I know there's an educational thing you can do, and you can call plumbers and do all this type of things, but that might be helpful for some of those general things that people might take advantage of, and they can do that right away and prepare in case we have another 100-year rain in the next 2 weeks like we've had more in the last 3 years. Those types of things. So that was the idea behind it.
Well, I'm sure you guys will take that into consideration as you're coming up with your dates getting close.
I kind of want to jump in on that. First, directly to Mr. Myers, I lived for a long time in 75 North Park and moved 5 doors down to 800 Bell. So we're basically neighbors, and was well aware of the water at Bell in Park and other areas. I'm still confused, though, about this meeting that's going to be scheduled. And we're talking about specific areas. Well, how do we decide which area is going to be studied? Should residents be contacting somebody to say, I want my area studied? Who's deciding what areas are going to be studied? How much detail is going to be given? You know, is it, since Mr. Meyer came, is not as Park and Bell gets studied, or if another person missed this meeting, does their area get studied? How are you going to decide that? I guess is one question I have. The next question is, if we're going to have a detailed meeting, why aren't we incorporating the findings that we're going to have in the report that we just purchased as part of the village-wide meeting? If it's going to be one meeting to educate the whole village, why are we going to do it mid-September, let's say, when we're getting a report that's going to be talking about 47th Street and different changes that we're proposing? And lastly, if we're not going to incorporate, I don't even know if it's going to be at a village board meeting like this or something else. If it's going to be at a village board meeting like this, we just talked about the town hall meetings, which it won't occur at. We don't have a whole lot of other meetings, so it seems to me that we should be picking a date and just saying, here is the date, as opposed to, well, we know it's going to be done in 30 days, so let's say September, October. With all those town hall meetings, if it's going to be on one of those dates, I don't see how we're not going to be, we can't pick a date before next meeting saying this is when we're going to do it. But again, I'd like to have some idea of how areas are going to be designated to be studied in depth, and what format is really going to take place.
I'll take a shot at the last question and then turn it over to either Ryan or Bob. I don't anticipate that this meeting will be part of the board meeting. It will be a separate meeting to invite the public to discuss this issue, separate and apart from any other village board business. It would be an important enough meeting that we need to focus on just that topic. So it's not reserved to a Monday night board meeting, right? Brian, in terms of, or Bob, scope of the meeting anticipation, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Sure. And really, the way we're connecting the dots is that we are responding to the citizen calls that we've received over the last 2 to 3 storm events. That is the focus of our studies. There's a huge neighborhood between the 600 and 700 blocks that's being that was impacted, and so we've targeted that, as well as a couple other block areas that we've heard, such as the 1 to 400 block of Sunset, the 100 block of Peck, and some others, as Ryan has collected and mapped out where the neighborhoods are that are impacted. I think that's reasonable. I think that is also what's affordable. Right now, just doing those areas, the cost is estimated to be in excess of $100,000 for televising. I think at some point you need to cut things off and go ahead and identify those areas which seem to be acutely impacted. And then the other thing that we need to do as part of this educational process is talk about that for the other 2 drainage basins. We've identified a long-term relief sewer plan, and what we're intending to do is identify if there's anything that needs to be corrected immediately as far as a repair is concerned, as it relates to the sewer televising. So that's generally the thought process that has gone into this as far as areas. Otherwise, we'd be televising the entire village all at once, and that's just not realistic from a time standpoint as well as a cost standpoint. We've done 6 years worth of televising. We've only done 1/3 of the village. We could be televising for 21 years before we get to the entire village based on some sort of methodical and systematic way of televising. So if there's any other details, Brian, to that, be welcome to hear it.
No, the only thing I would add to that is that in terms of the word study, I would break it up into 2 components. Certainly we're videotaping to make sure that there's not a collapsed line or anything, to make sure that the sewers are operating as designed. The other part of that is I would suggest that, roughly the village is broken up into 3 drainage basins, and all 3 of those areas are being studied. As Bob mentioned, Mars and Ores, as well as the area south of 47th Street.
Has the videotaping started?
No.
Okay. The $100,000 to videotape sounds like a lot of money, and I think it's money well spent if we're learning something. I would hope that if we're getting the results we don't find out, and so we videotaped and spent $100,000 and everything worked according to plan. It seems like if there's, as we're doing this, not finding anything, we should redirect. So as far as that's my comment as far as televising. As far as setting the date, since it's not going to be on a Monday, I would say it's even more important that the staff pick the date, because everybody else is going to have to make their schedules around that date. And the more notice you give, the better for the residents and myself. So I just asked to have a date picked, with ample time to finish the work that you want to finish, and allow the people to make their schedules.
I don't think there's any disagreement there. The importance of this meeting is that we get as many people there as possible who are interested and concerned, and we have as much good information to share as we can possibly garner in that period of time. So, and I think our staff has those 2 thought processes in mind, and as soon as they're able to identify a date where they feel that they can have that type of information, with plenty of lead time for our residents, that's how it is.
Madam President, since we are hoping and anticipating a very large turnout for this meeting, I'd suggest that we not limit ourselves to convening in this room, and that we contact LT, one of the junior high schools, whatever, in order to accommodate as many residents as we can. This room fills up pretty quickly and can get pretty hot, not because it's a hot topic, but let's not limit ourselves to meeting right here. Let's make ourselves as comfortable as possible while we're talking about this, and contact the schools and see if they won't help us.
I appreciate your comment. Our staff has anticipated that, and I think has already reached out to a couple of different possible venues. There we go.
I have one last comment on the sewer. I know Tom Hoyer did a really good job of explaining what the Maple Avenue Relief Sewer and the Ogden Avenue Relief Sewer projects would do for the 200 drainage stations. And I don't remember if we taped that meeting or not, but maybe if we did, we could replay that on cable for the folks that live in those basins to understand what the long-range plans are that we have on the books and that we're continuing down and try to get done, because I think that would be helpful for the folks that live there to get that information sooner than later. It might be. I remember, Tom, it was a long meeting, but it was very informative. So, on tape, you could fast forward. We had to sit through the whole thing. So.
Thanks. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.